Welcome back to the Own Your Awkward podcast. I'm your host, Andy Vargo, and every episode we get into what has made our guests vulnerable and how they've learned how to own their awkward in order to live their best life. Stay tuned so you can hear every awkward moment in today's show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Own Your Awkward podcast. I am super excited today to have my very funny, very talented friend, comedian Monica Nevi with us. Monica, welcome. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you here. I've known you for a few years now, and every time I see you perform, I laugh at jokes I've already heard, even harder the first time.
That's good. You're like same stuff, jokes. But it's good. No,
there's always a good mix of new stuff. But even when it's something I've already heard, I'm like, oh, I hope she says this one. And
good. That's good. You always want that as a comedian. I feel like musicians get that more than we do.
Right? Yeah. Because how many times do we listen to the same songs or watch the same?
Yeah. Over and over again. Comedians should be allowed to do that. You can have favorites.
Exactly. And there are comedians when I see the same joke in a movie and I still laugh at it. So
yeah.
Why does our job have to be harder?
That's funny.
Yeah. So Monica, you are a nationally touring comedian. You got all sorts of good stuff going on. What's the most positive thing you see in the world right now?
It's I think a lot of things look a lot scarier than they are at the moment. And I just got back yesterday from being in more southern states. Now I was in Ohio, Kentucky, and then Indianapolis. So it's the first time I've traveled that far in quite a while, just from, lots of stuff going on. And because it has been so divided, I was a little nervous, and actually it was great. Everyone was very sweet and same southern charm that I have always liked. And sometimes I get a little nervous to talk more about being gay when I'm in the South, and they didn't kill me. So that's good. You get a little nervous, but I do it anyways. And then, no, they were great and so sweet. And kind of that same thing I've always really liked about the South, which is the opposite of the Northwest, which is they talk to anybody and everybody, and they want to check in on you, see how you're doing. And it was still that same vibe. And I felt very, I felt like they liked me. So that was it gave me a little bit more of a positive outlook on the whole country instead of as divided by region, especially as it feels sometimes. So
sure. That's beautiful to hear, because we're subjected to what we hear either through social media or through the press, and that's filtered by somebody's lens.
Yeah.
And we forget that there are good people everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think even going like, oh, we're from different places, or even, maybe you believe a couple of different things than me. We've almost lost the ability to be like, oh, but you're still a person. And I'm sure there's something we can agree on or get along about or whatever. And I do think that still exists. I think we don't have to hate each other as much as we've been told we have to. So it was nice to hear it coming from that Southern accent again, and everyone just being excited and happy that you were there, and said I was from Seattle, and nobody got mad about it. So that was good.
I love that. Well, yeah. And I'm a big believer that we kind of, we foretell whatever situation we're going to walk into. And if we walk into it expecting animosity and fighting and all this stuff, then that's kind of what we end up finding.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. And, whatever, being from the Northwest, we can be a little stuck in our ways as well, and have not the best outlook on some other areas of the country. And sometimes when I tell people that, like, Memphis, Tennessee is one of my favorite cities, they're like, what, why? And I'm like, yeah, it's different, but have you been there? No, of course not. So they don't, it's going in and expecting to just have a good time and hope for the best, usually ends up, there's a lot of people out there. You're going to find somebody that's going to be your friend.
Yeah, exactly. You'll attract people that, and I hate to say like-minded, because that's not always, you don't have to be completely like-minded, but people that you can get along with and vibe with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So that still exists. So that's good.
Good. Yeah, exactly. Love that. And that just, I think, gives a lot of hope to be not just our own country, but the world, that you can go places and find that.
Yeah, it was pretty hopeful to me because I hadn't really traveled much since then. So
Yeah.
yeah, now it's still the way that I liked it before. So that's good.
That's awesome. Well, you know why you're here. Everybody wants to know about your awkwardness. So what's that thing that what's that awkward thing you've had to own to get to this amazing life you're living?
I do love the idea of like owning it, because I had always like told people kind of how I was as a kid, and I got bullied a lot for it. And instead of maybe trying to become somebody that I wasn't, I just stayed the same forever. And eventually that became a really good thing about me. So kind of reading more about just your podcast and stuff and kind of the angle, I think that fits pretty well. And so when I was growing up, I was very much a tomboy, which is what we used to call it then. I don't know. Did not did not care about what I looked like. Wasn't interested in girl clothes, if you want to put it that way. Most of my friends were boys, played sports and all that stuff. And yeah, at the time, everybody called that being a tomboy. And then I was pretty like, once you get to middle school, because I really didn't change that. I never put my hair up, like ever. And if you don't know much about me, but I was a basketball player. I played basketball all the way through college. And so it wasn't until like maybe fifth grade that I put my hair up. So I was playing basketball with my hair down like all the time.
Yeah. You don't see that often.
No, and it's dumb. Don't do it. But, and then once I put it up, I would like only wear it up. So then until like college, I really wore my hair up like all the time, which is I don't know. There's some security I find with my hair, but it was just this like, it was just the tomboys, very quiet, very shy. And so it wasn't even like when I was getting bullied, I was just kind of like, okay, like just I didn't fight back. I didn't, when I was really young in like elementary school, I got in fights a little bit. But then, as I got older, it was just like, whatever. And then it was like seventh grade, maybe, where basically one of the cool girls, we sat next to each other in science class, and she talked a lot and just started talking to me. Like, I think it bothered her that I like didn't talk very much. Then we started talking, and she just thought I was really funny and did not care that I was, what the other mean girls were saying about me. And also never said like, because it wasn't, when I was younger, girls would be like, let me give you a makeover. Like, let me give you a makeover. Let's put some makeup on you. Let's do this, which I like. And it's funny because as I've gotten older, I've gotten more feminine or more kind of, I feel good doing those things, but I just never really did when I was younger. And I was very focused on sports at the time. Right. But she never did that. And so then I started to see value in just me being the way I was okay, and actually kind of cool at certain times. And I'm sure humor was a defense mechanism in that, in those situations, because I was like, if I can distract you by making fun of something else or making something funny, then maybe you'll forget that I don't fit in with what you think the girls are supposed to be like. And then I kind of became I became friends with her. And then all of her other friends were like, like Mean Girls style, like the plastics, like, like just very into what brands they were wearing, makeup, different things. Our school was interesting. Like half was from more where I was from, Renton, Washington, a little bit. It's not like low income, but lower middle class. And then the other half of the school was from like Newcastle, which is actually like a pretty rich area in Washington state. So they were more from that side. And I just didn't really fit in, but also didn't care to. I don't know. Now I think about it and I go, I don't know why I didn't like feel more pressure, like try to change certain things. I don't know, but
pretty awesome that you didn't, because I think the majority of time when we hear people talk about that time in their life, it's this urge to give into the crowd or to really struggle with the fact that I'm not like everybody else, or I have to be in this mold in order to actually feel okay. And you kind of took that the other way, from way younger than most people would.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. My parents never really made me feel bad about it. Some other adults did, there was a lot of like, why don't you wear dresses? Oh, you'll never wear a dress, which is also the odd like awkward thing. Like people would be like, oh, you must not like dresses. And then I'd wear a dress and they'd be like, oh my God, look at you wearing it. I'm like, why make it weird? You were just talking shit that I didn't
Right.
like. I want to wear it. Leave me alone. You know,
Yeah,
it
it's
was,
like
I
stop
never,
commenting on it.
yeah, it's like every single thing that you would do
Mhm.
is just scrutinized essentially. And I don't know if it's still like that, but that was pretty common. Just to be
Yeah.
like, you should be more like us. And then when you're like, okay. And then they're like, why are you trying to be like us? You're like, Jesus Christ, what do you, what do you want me to
Well,
do here?
and I think about like that Mean Girls mentality of where they're like, oh, we should give you a makeover, and I try to see like, okay, is this the only way that they understand that something can be positive, so they feel like they're giving you this gift of
Yeah,
gift of
maybe.
beauty, and you're like, I don't need it, so I'm
Yeah.
okay without all of that.
Eventually, when I think they came to terms with the fact that I wasn't really going to change and that was okay. And then kind of the really like the meaner girls ended up, once we got to high school, they were not very popular. And then some of the other friends that I had made just got nicer essentially. And
Mhm.
that girl that I sat next to in science class is still my best friend. I officiated her wedding, she'll be at mine. That's, yeah, eventually maybe it became more obvious to me that if people could like me just for who I am and not necessarily me trying to fit in, then I should also give them that benefit of the doubt and say, even though maybe we're whatever, don't have the same amount of money, don't dress the same, that kind of thing, we could still be friends. And so eventually it kind of weeds itself out.
Mhm.
But yeah, in high school, I was actually like pretty popular. I mean, I think that may have had a lot to do with sports. I was, a good athlete and
Mhm.
um, got, whatever. I was in the newspaper when I was younger and things like that.
Yeah.
And so that could have helped. But also, I think eventually people went, well, she's not going to change. So we might as well stop
Mhm.
trying to do it. And then, I was prom queen and all that stuff. So,
Wow. Well, it's interesting that, yeah, you really could own it and not have to step into that, but then have that be so accepted at a time in most people's lives when that biggest fear is that rejection, at least for a lot
yeah.
of people.
When it is weird, because now I think back on it a lot and kind of how, because it's still, I think a lot of it was that I was just quiet. Like I didn't,
Mhm.
I didn't really I didn't fight about it, but it didn't mean there wasn't like internal issues with it where I
Sure.
didn't feel, I was like, well, maybe I should be different. Everyone's fucking telling me I should be different.
Right.
Um, and then coming to terms with the fact that I am gay, you go, okay, well, I don't want people to just assume because I was a tomboy that I'm gay, but also I don't want to hate myself for being gay. Like there was a weird back and forth internally about that and kind of like, I don't even know. I didn't want to also, I don't know, when people stereotype you, then you don't want to be that stereotype, which isn't like
Right.
doesn't necessarily help
No,
you, but it's a
it's
weird
tricky.
reaction to it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, okay, if I don't necessarily want to be in the stereotype, but also I think sometimes it's you might not see yourself the way that they see you, and they see either the stereotype they're trying to put you in or pieces of you in that stereotype, and then that means the way that usually comes out is that, well, then all of these other things go with that same stereotype, and that's not
Right.
necessarily true.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And
I mean,
yeah, I had
yeah, I can relate to that.
yeah, I had issues with that. But then it was just and maybe that's why, I have a good group of people in my life from when I was younger. And I do pride myself on my ability to make first impression, like for, um, a correct vibe from someone off the first impression. And
Yeah.
I do think that has a lot to do with it, with like yeah, just experience of like who was mean to me and why. And then who was nice to me and why. And it turns out it doesn't have as much to do with whatever, where they're from or how they look or any of that, as it does to just who you actually are, which means you have to talk to people. Not everybody wants to do that, but you got
Yeah.
to get to know them. So
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
I think there's a couple things that are unfortunate. Well, one is, and this isn't unfortunate necessarily, but you very much sounded confident in high school, and that makes a big difference. If you're confident, no matter how vocal or how you appear, then that kind of takes away that firing power that people have.
Yeah, it was interesting because I was definitely confident in a few things.
Mhm.
It took me a while to really maybe embrace that I was funny. Like I always enjoyed being funny. It was always helpful. It made me feel more comfortable around, older kids or whatever, if I could be funny.
Mhm.
But I didn't really identify as that. I wanted to be seen as like this exceptional athlete that people would be like, oh, well, you're cool because you're good at
That's
basketball,
your thing,
basically.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, which is a weird thing. But when I was younger, it was not like that. I was so shy. And even now, like
Mhm.
I'm pretty shy, or I'm kind of a low energy person. And so people don't really understand that with stand up. They're like, but you get in front of people all the time. And isn't that scary? And it's not when I'm on stage. I get nervous before, but I feel very confident up there. And
Mhm.
sometimes when I get off stage, I go, I wish I could be like that all the time, And
Oh,
so
right.
maybe
Like,
there was
why can't
part
I
of
bring
that.
that off the stage with me?
Yeah. I feel exhausted afterwards sometimes. When people talk to you after shows and stuff, you're like, all right, I'm almost out here. But
Yeah.
maybe that's because that from basketball, like in the game, I didn't think about anybody, that was watching us or whatever. I was just focused on the thing I was doing and I was confident in that. And
Right.
so maybe you pull some of that, or you just are reminded that like, hey, I have this other thing that I am good at.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, and that was the thing that I was starting to say about unfortunate is that we tie whether or not someone has a lack of confidence to how vocal they are. So if you're
Yeah.
quiet, all of a sudden you're deemed as you must have insecurity issues, or you must not be comfortable, or you must be afraid. And sometimes you just don't like to talk,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
fine.
I was reading I don't even know if I think it was just an article, but just about how, our world is set up to reward the extrovert.
Mhm.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that they are better, or, in
Right.
whatever the certain field is, they're just more vocal and that's what people hear about. And I was like, oh, I'd never really thought of that. But that's true. Like, I don't, it's taken me years and years to really value the other things that I do, whatever, podcasts, other writing, different stuff like that,
Mhm.
because I was just afraid that, I don't know, people wouldn't like it or something. So it takes me a long time to like put things out. Um, and then you watch some other people and you're like, this is garbage. And they did not think about this very long, but look at them
Yeah.
being all confident and sticking it out there. So it just takes me longer to really like gain a confidence in something that I'm doing.
Yeah, and the thing is, no matter what your vibe is, whether you're more quiet and dry, or boisterous and over the top, you're gonna you're gonna attract your people. Your crowd is
Yeah.
gonna find the people that vibe with you and like you.
Yeah.
So you
And
got
that's what I want.
yeah. You're
Not
like,
that
I
I
want
don't.
the people that are my people. I don't
Yeah.
want to. I don't want to try and fake it to the mean girls,
I
right?
don't. Yeah, exactly. I don't dislike, people who are a little bit more over the top than I am.
Mhm.
And I think I can admire someone who has a different skill set than I do. But it's also like not everything is for everybody. That's what I
Right.
get. Like, you get mean YouTube comments all the time. I'm like, well, if you don't like it, it wasn't for you.
Yeah.
This is for a different person.
I never understand that. It's like, why did you take the time to say I don't like how
Yeah.
negative is your life?
Like I watched this whole thing and I'm like, look, that's still a view and this is still a comment. So I don't care what you
Yeah, exactly. Thank
did.
you.
Yeah,
Thank you for
exactly.
taking the time to do that because it helps.
Uh,
I know. I never know how to handle those comments. And sometimes my thing is I had a podcast episode a couple weeks ago and someone commented about the person and they were this person's filth. And I was just like, yes, I'm getting negative attention. That must
yeah. You know what? Nothing gets you more popular than negative attention.
exactly. And I was just like, and the ironic thing is the episode was about the person's awkward was about the need to be liked. And coming to
Okay.
terms
Yeah.
with the fact that not everyone's gonna like them. And
Well, it
I
made
just
it.
want to say you've proven our point. Thank you.
Yeah. Maybe I'm the opposite. Then I have like there was a fear of being liked or something, or just a
Yeah.
fear of attention because it was negative for a long time. I don't know, but
So when you started to shift to where you realize like I don't need to make over, I don't need to be liked. Did you notice, was there a point where you kind of noticed a change in how you held yourself?
I think in retrospect I can kind of see that, but I don't think at the time I really noticed. And I still am like this. Like I tried to focus on one or two things that I'm doing at a time. And that makes everything else that maybe isn't going as well feel not as bad. I don't know if
Sure.
that's healthy now that I said it out loud, but you know, so in high school or whatever it was, I was very focused on sport. And yeah, I don't know. It didn't, and I think I gained confidence from some of the other things.
Mhm.
And so it definitely, now I go, oh yeah, I definitely felt different, especially the older I got in high school than I did, you know, middle
Yeah.
school or whatever. But I don't know if I noticed it at the time.
Mhm.
And then, you know, yeah, by the end of it, I was, you know, involved in student body and put on the dances, and but was still an athlete and all that stuff. So there was more of like, I was in with the people that I thought, you know, or whatever, are portrayed as like the mean high school people, maybe, which actually it doesn't end up being those people. It's really kind of a weird, because, you
Mhm.
know, in movies or whatever, they're like, oh, it's the quarterback and the cheerleaders and they're
Right.
mean to everybody. And I'm like, our cheerleaders were kind of nerdy too. I don't know. Um, but yeah, just in, yeah, and with a more involved group, I would say. Maybe
Well,
not cool, but you know,
yeah.
involved.
Well, it's like every stereotypical high school movie. I just recently watched Romy and Michelle's high school reading because I hadn't watched that for years.
I love that movie.
Oh, I hadn't seen it forever. It just popped up on Prime. And I'm like, I need to watch this again. But it's that whole story, right? Of everybody thought they were worse off than everybody, and everybody was making somebody miserable, but really everybody felt like crap, and everybody felt
Yeah.
undervalued, or were coming to terms with something, and whatever thing we were bringing is what we were putting on. And for me, I was just that loner guy that was like, kept my coat on and just ate lunch outside. I was like, I don't want anybody to know anything about me. I'm just gonna zip in and zip out.
I don't know why I kept my coat on is such a perfect, like, man, I went through a period of time as a basketball player. And this was like maybe sixth grade, something where, you know, you do camps during the summer. And
Yeah.
at that time, like my body was changing. I'm a woman, right? And so I had to start wearing bras.
Oh
And I
yeah.
thought that was weird, you know, because I hadn't worn a bra before.
Yeah.
And so I had like a cut off, you know, like a jersey type of shirt with the
Oh
bra
yeah.
underneath. And I didn't want anybody to see it. So I played the whole day in like a sweater,
Oh yeah.
like just playing basketball in this long sweatshirt because I just didn't want anyone to see that I had a bra on.
Yeah, I just can't imagine like how hot that would
It
be.
was so hot. And I was like rolling the sleeves up and stuff. And I was like, why don't you take that off? I'm like, don't worry about it.
Yeah, just no, it's attached.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
because
that
then you don't
thing,
want to
yeah.
explain why you're wearing the sweater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why
No,
wear the
that's
tank top?
fair.
Anyways, doesn't matter.
No, but it's true. I think we've all had those spaces, and I think just understanding, you know, like you said, like you didn't necessarily see it at the time, but looking back, you can see it. And I think that all we can really do is try to take that lesson into, well, now when I go into a new situation, who are the people that I think might be, you know, putting on a front, or, you know, you said that you have a pretty good ability to read people right away, but kind of remember, well, you know, maybe they're in that space that
Oh,
I was.
yeah. Well, and I think now, you know, I mean, with what we do, it attracts a lot of people who are sometimes in a vulnerable space or in transition. You know, I mean, I found stand up in a really dark time in my life. And so I think that's pretty common. And so for the most part, and I'm not saying that all stand-ups are sad or whatever the stereotype is, but there's just other things going on usually. And
Mhm.
so it's a good space to just be like, you can come here and just be here. And that maybe is what's attractive sometimes. But I also think about it with kids, and that, you know, you can tell them like, I know it seems like it is really bad right now, or like it's going to be like this forever, but it really isn't. And I think I had, you know, told myself things like that before in my life, but now going back and going, oh yeah, people were mean to me here, and then it was great here, and then stuff was bad here, and then it was good again here. Like it really does come back around. And maybe things are really good right now for you. It's going to get tough again, but you know that you can get through it because you have. And so it's with our son, it's important for me that he knows that, you know, like when things are tough, they're going to get good again. Don't worry.
Yeah. Yeah. I've practiced like being able to say, this is the snapshot of time that I'm in right now.
Yeah.
My life might be great this week. It might be horrific this week, but that's not that my life is horrific. It's this way in this
Right.
moment.
Just right now. Yeah.
Hopefully it's 5 minutes, maybe 5 days, but not 5 years. You never know. But you're right, it does come and go.
Yeah. My grandparents would say that about their marriage. I don't think they'd say it was horrific, but they don't really fight. And so you'd say, well, that's interesting. Like, why don't you fight? And she goes, because it's not going to matter in an hour. Like, you're going to get really mad at each other or whatever. And then an hour from now, you're going to forget or not be as upset or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty true for life too. Maybe not an hour, but it could be bad right now, but it's not going to matter later.
Well, that's beautiful that they recognize it and are able to share that.
They're a pretty interesting group. Yeah, they've been married for like 60 years.
Nice. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned how you would use your comedy to kind of cope back then. I'm curious how that transitioned into you making comedy your livelihood. Was there a point where it was, I'm funny and I'm going to do this, or how did that journey happen?
Yeah, I mean, was there a point? I don't know if there was like an exact point, because I knew that I loved stand up, but I also knew that I wasn't, like, when I was being funny in real life, it wasn't like that. Like, I wasn't putting on a performance of any type, or like, it was just, I think it first started probably around that same time, like 6th, 7th grade. Whoever was sitting next to me would get the like under the breath comments that I still have a hard time like not saying them out loud for some reason, but not very loud. So there's always one person next to me that could hear it. And once people
I remember doing the same thing. And they would be the one that would get in trouble because they were
laughing so loud. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Once I started noticing that there was more of a pattern with that, of like, it didn't really matter who was next to me, or I don't know. Yeah. Or people who maybe before had been mean to me. And then it was giving me positive attention, which that I didn't expect. And especially when it's stuff, because they still do it, where it's just kind of an observation that maybe not everybody saw. And you're just like, well, that's kind of silly, whatever. Say it under your breath. And then they laugh because they hadn't thought of it or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then that person, I don't know how many relationships have started like that for me, of people just being like, oh, I think I like this girl, like she's funny. She's whatever it is. It happened even my last day jobs. That was something that, I got along with bosses because I would make some comment in a meeting on accident, which I really didn't mean to, but
right. Just can't help myself.
Yeah, it still worked. I was still in college getting in trouble for like making comments in class.
Just never grow out of that.
Yeah. But there was a time so I started watching a lot of stand-up when I was like 13. Mm-hmm. Like, I'd stay home to watch Friday night stand-up on Comedy Central and stuff. Mm-hmm. And then it was maybe like my junior year in high school. It started to become apparent that if the group needed a story told, they would have me tell it. It would be like, Monica, you tell it, just, I think from a keeping attention point of view, but then like even, Thanksgiving break, then we'd come check in. How was your Thanksgiving? And I'd tell the stories about my family and they would just think it was hilarious. I don't know. Then I started really it was almost that situation of like you standing in front of a group of people sitting down and just telling them a story, really, but they were having a good time and everybody's paying attention and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if I equated the two at the time, but it wasn't too long after that I started writing jokes.
Okay.
It was probably my freshman year in college that I just started writing jokes. And then I was playing basketball and then I got hurt and couldn't play anymore, and had kind of looked into before, where to do open mics or whatever. I mean, at the time, when you catch a little kid like trying to look up porn or something and they literally type in like porn or like boobs, that was me Googling like how to do an open mic. I was like, how do you become a comedian? Like, right. I don't know anything else. So that was that. And I swear, cause this was, 2009, I probably Googled the same things 50 times with the same answers in Seattle. There's like at the time, whatever, 5 open mics.
When you're trying to get into something, you kind of have to keep, I'll do it again. And like we keep doing the same thing.
Yeah. What if it changed and you're like, oh, this document on the Comedy Underground website that's been the same since 1983. Like, right. No, that's not, yeah, there's this, yeah. So, um, uh, I had looked it up, and then it took me probably like 8 months. And I had already, we had decided that I couldn't play anymore, and that was a big change in my life because I identified as a basketball player, and then you don't have that thing anymore. So there was a bit of like, well, who am I then? So I went with a friend to what was then, well, Giggles, but had, if you don't know the history of Seattle stand up, it did close maybe like 2 weeks before we go to this open mic. And the owner's outside, and he's like, "Oh, are you here for the open mic?" And we were like, "Yeah, we're just here to watch." And he goes, "Oh, well, we're making some changes, but it'll be back in like a month." And then in that month, it became Jiggles, which was the strip club. I don't think they really did the open mic still, but then
Right.
that only lasted for like maybe 6 months. And then it tried to go back to Giggles, but then like, because I did a show there at some point when they were kind of transitioning back, and there was still mirrors around you and like a pole on the stage and stuff. And the back part had like all these velvet booths that were clearly for lap dances and stuff.
For your private comedy, for
Yeah.
your private jokes.
And every person
Maybe
had to
20
say
bucks.
something about the pole being on stage.
Right.
Yeah, so that was it. That didn't work out. And so it was probably like, yeah, 6 months after that I went to Laughs in Kirkland, watched with actually the same girl that I sat next to in science. She came with me to watch and see how it went. And one of the guys she was with knew the guy who was hosting. And so we talked, and they were like, "Yeah, just come do it next week." And I did. And I lied to Dave. Sorry, Dave. That I brought people, and I didn't, but it was January. So there was a bunch of people there from, Resolution Comics, bring in 6 people, and it went well the first time, but I felt, and now it's pretty obvious, I was over prepared. I had been practicing because you looked it up, right? Oh, I Googled it so many times. It said you have 3 minutes. Don't say hi to the audience when you get on stage. That's like, you don't, there's a bunch of people on this open mic. You don't need to be like, "Hey, how you guys doing?" So I was like, okay, I'm not going to do that. And then they're like, "When you see the light, like wrap it up. Don't burn the light," which I didn't quite understand what that meant, but also did, I guess. And I was like, okay, 3 minutes. This is the 3 minutes I'm going to do. So for like a year, I was practicing this 3 minutes in the shower,
Right. Yeah.
So I was like very ready, which is funny because then at the bottom of that, it was like, "Don't over rehearse. It doesn't sound, like there was just so many things which I probably, you didn't really remember, but it went well. And then, promptly after I'm sure sets where I bombed on open mics like we all do, but
But back then we didn't really think we were bombing. It was
no,
like,
it was
I
great.
got so many laughs, and you listen to the tape.
I was like,
there was a table somewhere.
I'm ready. I'm ready to. Yeah. And 12 years later, I'm like, I don't know if I am ready yet.
Well, it's very entertaining. So that's
you
doing it right. But I think there is that as an entertainer, there's always that tie to whatever our last performance was, that we always expect to be getting better and better and better. And as soon as we have one that, for whatever reason, the laughs weren't as loud, or the following wasn't as big, or the audience wasn't as big, at least I know for me, it's really easy to go into this, well, how come that one didn't get as much?
Yeah.
Am I losing it, or
right? Yeah. Is it
was
me?
it just
It's
an off
always
night? Maybe, whatever.
Yeah. That's funny because, we can have the same thoughts about stand up and your career that, it's bad sometimes, it's going to come back around. Don't worry, which is true. You're going to have a weird show on a Wednesday at a casino, and then Friday's going to be great, whatever. And also, like, people made a lot of comments about the way that I dressed and my hair and stuff when I first did stand up. So I was like, oh, we're just back to this again. This is fine. I'll get through it, like, don't, which is true. Eventually it was all
Come
fine.
full circle, but now I'm on stage here.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm starting over. This is me in 3rd grade again. So
I always think it's funny how much advice you get in any part of life from people who haven't made it any further than you.
Yeah.
They aren't even as far along as you. It's like, well, if you did this, or you really, what I watch is that. And I'm like, I'm glad that that advice is working out for you. I'll, find my own path. But.
Well, and especially now, things change so often, people being like, when I first started, there was a comic, I won't say who it is because, well, whatever. I'll tell you later.
Well, with the same followers, I'm sure that-
Yeah.
but yeah,
No, they just, it seemed like maybe it was a little bit of an intimidation factor with knowing who they are now, but
yeah,
was like, don't make a website, don't do any of this stuff, don't, don't do this joke, don't do, I did NBC's like stand up for diversity when they were here, when I had only been doing stand up for like 8 months, which hypothetically probably not the best idea, but whatever. They were like, well, then they're going to remember you as not that funny. Not true. Like just all these things. And then come to maybe like 4 years ago, that same comic was asking my advice about what to do about certain things. So people are always going to tell you whatever they think at the time, maybe, and usually in a way where you're like, yep, I have to do that exact thing. And I don't think that's true. I think you have plenty of time and ways to do it however it works for you.
right, yeah, and that's the thing is if we all go up on the stage with the same presence, the same style, not very entertaining for the audience, and someone else is already watching that somewhere else. So
Yeah. And this has all changed so much. I mean, I lived in LA for 3 years, and that was 4 years ago. Oh my God. And then it was still like, you need to be here or in New York, and you need to do all, TV is worth anything, which it is not now. um, you can't live anywhere else. And now you see everybody's moving, or, they can be successful from wherever they
yeah,
are
you're
and
like, well,
put
here's
your
my
own
stand up
stuff
from
together.
Moses Lake or
Exactly.
whatever most random small town. And
Yeah, exactly. And then, people are producing their own specials. And I think people got tired of so much gatekeeping, and then realizing that like, oh yeah, the audience is right here. Sometimes, it's up to you guys to consume what you want. It's not up to some network executive to decide what they want to consume. And
right,
so that's changed quite a bit, which is, yeah, the same thing. Like whatever advice, I mean, even right now I could tell you, okay, you need to be on TikTok, you need to be doing stand-up reels on your Instagram, and you need to, whatever, monetize your YouTube, blah, blah, blah. But in 6 months, that's not going to be what we're doing anyway. So we
right,
just, yeah, I think we
well,
take it very seriously, and they
yeah,
maybe don't know what they're talking about either.
right. And it's also like I try to, if people ask me for things, like if they actually ask, I try to word in a way of, well, this is what's worked for me.
Yeah.
And that's all I can say. That might not work for you. There's other stuff I have seen other people say to do, and it hasn't worked for me, but I might not be doing it right. I'm not saying that doesn't work. Just for me,
Well,
that doesn't happen.
and I always encourage people to be as balanced as possible. So we can give you whatever advice on how to cut your videos, put them up, do this, blah, blah, blah. But if those things are impeding on your ability to live a life that you want, or have some sort of self-care or whatever, or family time or whatever it is, like though, you don't have to sacrifice any of that for those things. And don't let people tell you, especially, it's always going to be someone who's like, well, you're going to have to do this, and I know you have kids, so that's going to suck. It's going to be coming from someone who does not have kids. Like that's always true. And that's not, we have plenty of examples of very successful people who have children and wives and husbands and families, and that don't live in LA, and it's not the anomaly that people think it is.
Yeah, you figure it out within whatever things you have to work around.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So what do you have coming up, or what do you want to make sure, where's the place for people to go? We'll have the links in the description below for people to click on to get to your website. Now that I know you've got one.
Yeah,
I
I
told you
do.
not
I made
to.
it anyways.
All right, good for you.
My
But
brother
what do we
made it,
need to know about?
Well, my website is monicanevi.com, and that's got my live dates on there, and some other links to videos and stuff. YouTube has a lot of stuff on it, which is just youtube.com/monicanevi. We're doing one live stream maybe before this comes out. That's, during COVID, we did decide that was a good idea. Let's do some YouTube things, and it actually kind of kept us afloat for a while. And so I'm getting married October 1st. And some people had, thank you. Some people had asked if they could like give us gifts, which I feel weird about. So I was like, what if we do some live stream shows? And then, if they want to donate the same way they would, but you can say this is for your wedding kind of thing. So YouTube, follow me on YouTube or Instagram. Everything's just my name at Monica Nevi. And I'm pretty good about posting where my live dates are. But yeah, if you want to see whatever I'm doing on the internet, Oh yeah, and then I have a podcast called Dumb Pitches, which is I talk to successful people about their worst ideas.
I love that.
Thanks. It's a nice, quick, 25, 30 minutes. It's on YouTube and on all the, Spotify,
Right.
Apple, all those different things too. So that one's pretty fun.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I know that all of you out there listening and watching are going to go click on all of Monica's stuff, give her some likes and follows, and you won't be disappointed because she's hilarious and informative and insight, all the good things. I don't want to peg you. It's just funny.
No, I like, yes, informative and insight. I don't know if informative is, but I have insights.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Definitely. So before we go, what little advice might you leave people with on how they could own their awkward?
I mean, I kind of feel like it says it in the just based on my story, it says it in the title there, but it's whatever. I think people want you to think like, uniqueness is great and you should embrace that. But I think the bigger thing is if you feel good and you're not hurting anybody, then I think you should keep doing it. If you feel whatever safe or whatever thing you're into, if people or the way you dress or what sport you play or whatever, if they're not into that, but you still feel good, then fuck them, whatever.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it really does come down to how it's making you feel and what you're getting, how you're feeding yourself with it. So.
Yeah, I think that might be the most important thing in life, and I don't know if we give that enough. Is just feeling good, and if your ability to do that without any external, whatever help, if you can just be and feel good, like that's probably the ultimate thing. So if it makes you feel good and you're not hurting anybody, stick with it.
Agreed. Well, Monica, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. I've had a lot of fun.
Good. Well, it's been nice and it's been fun to learn more about you, and I've learned a lot. So I really appreciate it. We look forward to congratulations and best wishes on the wedding.
Thank you.
And everybody else, be sure to give Monica all the support you can. And as always, own your awkward. Thank you so much for listening in for today's show. Be sure to visit awkwardcareer.com to continue your journey. And of course, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends so they can find their awkward side and learn how to own it.